We're already off dancing. Well, hi everybody. So we are back with the latest installment of the Goosed Podcast. Over the last few weeks, we have looked at Spain, we've looked at Brazil, we've looked at Portugal, and we're actually going to be talking to probably the most patriotic of the lot today, Cork.
Bye.
And obviously, I'm representing my red today. Being from Limerick, we're not going to talk about what happened last week, but Viva España! The Euros are over. So
the one thing we can all agree on: go Spain.
Now, probably not so much in my family. I'm half and half. I'm born in London, but at the same stage, we couldn't be listening. Football's not coming home.
I have actually I have a brother who lives in London, so exactly half of my nephews, are being raised in dual citizenship. But I'll tell you, they know which passport means the most.
Good. So I suppose actually we may as well actually intro you. So with me today is DC Cahalane of, I suppose, everything. There's
everything. Everything. We'll talk. My paychecks currently come from Sure Valley Ventures, a venture capital firm, which been everywhere, done everything.
Yeah, I suppose so. The obvious question is, how did we get into doing this? So what Sure Valley Ventures are? They're a venture fund. They're venture capital. Yeah. And there's loads of different funding, so
I'll tell you, it's an interesting one. I could talk to you about venture capital all day, because it's for me, it's an obvious one because I have spent the last 15, 20 years of my life in and around startups. I like to kind of say, there's it's a bit like Jesus. He had these different life stages from carpentry, which we didn't hear much about, up to everything starting in his 30s. In my case, I've worked in startups. So I worked in Trustif in Cork with Pat Phelan. I worked with Peter and Dan in Teamwork, so I started my startup career working in startups. Okay. Then I went from that to working we'll say with startups, which was the 2017, I founded Republic of Cork down in Cork, the big startup and innovation hub. Eventually went from that to doing weird stuff over COVID, which we can talk about at some point. That's it. We'll just leave that. We'll just leave that there.
Just hang there for a second.
Leave that hanging there for the middle. And then when I came back after COVID, had a great time working with the guys in Dogpatch Labs in Dublin. So that second part of my career is very much, we call it working on the environment in Ireland for people who want to start up. And then kind of almost 12 months to the day now. I've been working, I've gone to the dark side, as some people prefer it. Now I work on the ruthless exploitation side of things, where I don't know how it's exploitation, where I give money to startup founders for their usually slightly terrible ideas, in order to progress things along. So this is the next phase of my career now.
Do you know what? I like that. It's we won't call it exploitation. It's Santa Claus with a price.
Santa Claus with a price. I like it, yeah.
That's what we're going
I'm not running the sweatshop. I just own the building that the sweatshop has to be located
exactly. In. The elves are basically like Uber drivers. They're not contracted in. They're free to leave at any time.
Yeah.
However. Oh, this is the one that gets me. This is the one that gets me in trouble.
Yeah. We're all in trouble anyway. Yeah. No, but look, I mean, I suppose, look, just to give you the actual picture, Sure Valley Ventures is it's technically a Waterford-founded venture fund. Barry Downs, the managing partner, Brian Kinane, the other founding partner, they exited a very successful company called Feed Henry down in Waterford. Feed Henry would have done mad stuff back in the 2012, 2013, 2014 era. I think they built the first Aer Lingus app and all this sort of stuff. So they had a very successful exit of the company and eventually essentially used the funds of that to go on and start Sure Valley Ventures in 2017. So since then it's been investing in AI, cybersecurity, and immersive. So we actually invest in things like the metaverse and stuff like that. And actually last week, one of the companies that we invested in many, many, many years ago sold for $450 million. And that was a metaverse company, believe it or not.
I feel like you read my notes.
some people are actually still and fundamentally that's what I do is I run the Cork operation, and I'm involved in the Irish team here We also heavily invest through a UK fund that we have. So our job is to basically go out, find the best companies operating in the AI, immersive and cybersecurity spaces, and assuming that they can turn great ideas into great businesses, we provide the capital to help them do that.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I feel like AI is like Hans in Zoolander, if you know that reference, like so hot right now.
Do you know what it is? It is, but I'll tell you the interesting thing about AI. We like as an example, last year we would have looked at probably 3,000 AI companies
course, yeah.
and like invested in a handful.
Yeah.
So again, it's like most things. Like there's the high level what's happening, then there's the what's actually happening, then there's this. It's a bit like Deadpool versus Wolverine. Like there's the actual spoilers, the semi spoilers. The people who think Taylor Swift is going to show up, and then all these things. And it's the same with AI. Like we invest in very specific verticals. Most of the verticals we invest in will neither result in Skynet taking over the world or us all being herded into camps by robots. That's not the part of AI that we traditionally invest in. But, for some people, those fears are still there.
Yeah, like this is the thing. I suppose like AI is like probably the big talking topic. And obviously if you see certain, people like Jeffrey Hinton, he's considering where his background is probably the godfather of AI. He's very against it these days. However, the way I like to look at AI is it can't replace human creativity. It can't replace us. It's very much about here's tools to support us in our jobs.
But John, that's exactly what it's going to be. It's like the easiest somebody explained to me. It's kind of like, it's going to take B players and turn them into A players. It's going to take C players and turn them into B players. Now, the one area where it will be troublesome is like with the D players, like because there is a certain amount of work, like warehousing and other things, where you will get robots to come in and they will take over. But for the most part, it's going to be about making things better. Like the way I always explain it to people is like, people think of AI and they kind of think, oh, is AI just like, it's just like the next big thing? But it's slightly different than that. Like AI is more like, years and years ago, that you had a situation where, everything was stored on servers and it went from servers to cloud. And then you had everything went from desktop to mobile. Like AI is more of a fundamental shift like that, in that there will be pre-AI stuff and AI stuff. Like in a year's time, if you're building software and you're not using AI in it, like you're just a dumbass. Like there's it's not ethical debates or any of that. It's just you're a dumbass to be doing it that way. Yeah. But actually, there is, the sheer scope of it. I don't know if you remember, when mobile phones came out, it was like, is the radiation frying our brain? Funny enough, as phones got better, suddenly people weren't talking about radiation frying your brain anymore. I think we're going through the AI is frying your brain type scenario at the moment. And eventually, when people have a deeper understanding of it, they'll start realizing what it is and what it isn't.
You know what? It's actually very true, because it's fear. I remember you probably remember this, just before COVID, when the big panic started, it was 5G. And it was all 5G. And I remember then when I was in college, it was 3D printing, because they were obviously doing like stem cell. That was like the start of stem cell printing. And it was and it was so every time there's like a new technology, it's automatically like, I think it's human nature, that thing of adverse to change, of fuck, this is going to take my place. No, I don't like this.
I remember years ago, I was at the Dublin Web Summit, when it was still the Dublin Web Summit, and I was coming home after it on the train, and I met a guy from Cork on the train, and his name escapes me right now. But I said, "Oh, what do you do for a living?" He's like, "Oh, I'm a biohacker," and I'm like, "What the fuck is a biohacker?" And then he started explaining to me that, in his small lab inside in Cork that was attached to his parents' house, he was basically, building a glow-in-the-dark bunny rabbit and this sort of stuff. And I was just like, I was sitting on the train going like, should I, like, is there somebody I need to tell about this stuff? Like, he was
hairnets and everything on it.
Yeah, you just take a gene from here and you splice it in here. And I'm like, I've watched way too many sci-fi movies to see this. And I remember thinking, like, what happens now? Like, I'm that guy in the movie who didn't pay attention. And like someday, the world will be, taken over by mutants, and I'll be going, if only I had gotten off that train and rang the cops. But actually, it turns out very successful. And as you know, it's like everything. It's like the smoking ban, the plastic bag tax, the recycling machines at the moment. It's never as bad. It's never as bad as we think it's going to be,
No, it's not. But Joe, it's almost, and I suppose this is where crowds like Sure Valley come into their own. It's like looking at these, kind of screening the ideas and going, these are the ones that make sense. You with your mad idea that's actually just terrible, go away. And
it's also interesting, John, because it's kind of weird because we have to look at stuff with a kind of a buffer because we're kind of like we're kind of trying to do a bit of future gazing here because there's no point in us investing in a company that's big, that's in a space that's big right now, because essentially we would overpay for that company. Yeah. So as AI is the best example, we invested in our first AI company in 2017. We sold our first generative AI company in 2018.
Yeah.
So now over the last 2 years, when every single VC in the world is investing in AI, I mean, we're not smug about it, but it is nice to be kind of going, okay, where were all of you a couple of years ago when we were trying to get, a bit more money together to invest in Startup X? So there's a certain amount of, for instance, we're still super strong and we still genuinely have strong belief in immersive. We thought the Apple headset coming out this year would be the big thing that would release it. Maybe we think now maybe it's the cheaper version of it or something. But actually, as we said, along that journey of waiting for it to become mainstream, we still sold a company for $450 million. So therefore, so somebody's doing something right. That was well in advance of me getting there, so I get to take zero credit for it.
No, but we can sing about it, and that's the point. But so I suppose people will hear this and go, "Ow, table." So people will hear this and be like, "Okay, so I have an idea. Where does somebody start?" I guess is the best question, because nobody's coming to you with going, "I have an idea, can you give me money?" They have to be some way down.
Well, here's the thing, right? Don't give it to the guys on TikTok who are telling you that you should set up a social media marketing agency. That's rule number one. Don't give it to them, right? Starting your own business is, I mean, it's always, here's the thing, right? It's hard, right? There is a natural instinct to think that, you're getting up in the morning, you fucking have to be in the office at 8:30, and wouldn't it be great to be in control of your own time? Yes, but you know what's also great? Going to the bank machine on a Friday and your wages being in the bank. That's also really, really good. And when you go to run a business for yourself, that's the first thing you give up. You give up an awful lot of certainty and stability. And I think you have to be the sort of person who's kind of comfortable in the chaos. Because actually, what I'll tell you what it's not like. It's not like anything that you watch on TV. So it's not like Dragon's Den or The Apprentice or Shark Tank or any of that sort of stuff. That's not how business ends up being. You look at some of the most successful guys that we have, guys and girls in business, the couple of things they all have in common, they are brutally hard workers. Even when they're successful, they're brutally hard workers. The other thing they do, which more, is they're incredibly good at managing their time. They're incredibly good at I think of the 3 or 4 of the most successful entrepreneurs I know in Cork. The thing that pisses me off the most is they're the same guys who are getting up at the weekend and doing triathlons or Ironman or thing, and that's because they know there's no such thing as work-life balance, but there is a thing where you got to look after yourself, or things or bad things happen. So I think there's a few bits and pieces like that, John, that kind of I'd call them there's a bit of myth busting has to go on where it's hustle culture and it's you work and you work and you work. You gotta work hard and you gotta work smart. It's not about the hours you put in,
No, I think it actually. What was it? Someone said to me before. It's what's the difference between genius and insanity? Common opinion.
Very true. Yeah.
Essentially, that's what it boils down to. And these people, like, you might have a really good idea, but you might not have that. For me, it's always about people. It's that follow through. It's that spark of insanity that says, "I'm going to do it." And for example, we're 9.5 years down the track with Goosed, and it's only this year, 2024, where we've actually been signing paid partnerships for the first time. Now we've generated revenue through on-site advertising and things like that, but it's taken 9 years to get to the point where myself and Martin are going, oh wait, somebody's actually going to pay us for this. What?
I think you could measure it in another way, John, because I think what's interesting is one of the things I always notice about entrepreneurs is I think they massively overestimate the number of yeses and massively underestimate the amount of no's. I'm sure you could put a number on the amount of people who've told you to take your paid partnership and stuff it over the years.
Yep.
And that is it's one of the most difficult things that entrepreneurs have to deal with, because they're naturally super optimistic people.
Yeah.
And sometimes that optimism gets them in an awful lot of trouble, because there's a wide wall between a wide chasm, I suppose, between optimism and realism. Yeah. So like a big part of it is like I think the way I've always looked at it is like inherently there's absolutely no value in an idea itself, right? Which means like anytime that I start a conversation with somebody about an idea and they start talking about patents and NDAs and all this sort of stuff, like they just lose me straight away. Because if it can be done, it has been done. There's only one exception to that, which I'll tell you in a minute. The area that I think people underestimate is like it's all about execution. Like in your case, it's all about, even when you weren't being paid, still going to the effort of putting content out, day after day after day after day after day. And like eventually my experience has been the people who are good at that and the people who manage to do that the longest are the people who win in the end. The one exception, I think, when it comes to ideas, where there is a bit of a gap at the moment, is I think you and me are screwed, John. We just gotta have to keep copying other people's ideas. But I do think like we're seeing a lot of women entrepreneurs coming to the market. Yeah. And I think purely in the market of ideas, they've been so underserved over the last 50 years, because most of the ideas for business people have come up with, it's been dudes coming up with them. And I'm not talking about like, oh, let's do another feminine hygiene company or something like that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fact that, as the largest group of purchasers in the world, which women have been proven to be, I think there's just massive opportunity, because I think they have a whole different mindset when it comes to how they buy goods, how they buy services, how they consume content. And I think for women entrepreneurs, there's probably a little bit of advantage at the moment in that idea phase, where there's a whole bunch of things that they can think of that you and me will never think of. And then I think when it comes to execution, I think everybody has a different style of executing, but fundamentally it just means actually putting in the hours, doing the work, making smart decisions. And hopefully if all that works out, you become a billionaire and you get to go party with Elon. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I want a pirate ship. That's my big goal.
Pirate ship.
But genuinely, that's the dream. Is I want to live.
I like it. Yeah.
That's the.
I like that idea. Actually, yeah. I know. Want a pirate ship parked up beside your pirate ship. That's my new goal. Yeah.
Just throw a rum from the other side. Grand job.
Anybody would like to buy us 2 pirate ships?
Different flags, and we will
sell the naming rights to the pirate ships. Yeah.
Oh, now we're talking. Yeah. The Ineos sponsored.
Yeah.
Oh Jesus! No, do you know what? It's a very good point to spend. Like even over the last, this year we've. I think this is podcast number 20 of this year, and I'd say it is 12-8 in favor of female founders, and that is not of a us going, I want to talk to female founders, or it's just they're interesting products, they're interesting companies. It's like we had Ayla Space there a couple of weeks ago, and they're doing miniature satellites for like sustainability projects. We had Jessica Kennedy, Gabadoo Education Tech, and stuff like that. And then you have, on the other side, you have the likes of myself and my mates who are doing a football game. We're not comparable. Like,
but I think it's, as I said, I'll tell you, we're so lucky in Ireland. I mean, we give out, we moan, we complain, but actually, like, it's a fucking great place to start a business.
Yeah.
Like, I have the experience of kind of been involved in businesses in the US and in the UK and mainland Europe, and metropolises like Cork, obviously. And I think you hear a lot of people give it out. Like, it's super hard anywhere.
Yeah.
But actually, the interesting thing in Ireland is that, like, Ireland's, like, I don't know if people know this, like, Ireland is the only, we get into politics now. Ireland is the only country in the world that has a government agency that's sole focus is essentially entrepreneurship, which is Enterprise Ireland. Like, I think maybe people think that there's an Enterprise Ireland in the UK or there's an Enterprise Ireland in America or something. No, there isn't. Like, it's absolutely unique. And, whether it's through Enterprise Ireland Direct or through the local enterprise offices, like, the sort of supports that they provide, again, whether you like them, loathe them, or want to give out about them or praise them, they don't happen in other countries. And I speak from experience because I spend 50% of my day with founders from the UK for our UK fund, and I spent 50% of my day with Irish founders. And I could tell you the guys in the UK are kind of like, I can't believe that you guys get benefit X or get benefit Y or can go to Enterprise Ireland and use any of their 27 odd offices around the world. I don't think they let you sleep on the couches there yet, but they definitely let you use them for meetings and stuff. So I think we have a great environment here. We have great facilities here in terms of, Jesus, there's like 300 co-working spaces across Ireland, and not just the big ones like Republic of Cork and Cork and RDI and Kerry and Portstead and Galway, Orma Bats and Belfast and Dogpatch in Dublin. But actually now, really, I remember I drove, where was it? I was somewhere the other day and I drove through some small little town in the depths of West Cork.
Yeah.
And I passed like 2 co-working spaces in this tiny, tiny town. And I was like, whoa. So, like, we do have a lot going for us in terms of that. And I think with the last bit, and you'll have seen this from your own interactions, like, it's actually the entrepreneur community in Ireland is pretty welcoming. And what I mean by that is, by contrast, the entrepreneur community in most countries is like shark eat shark. It is very much.
And it's very, like, I've definitely seen that from talking to guys in the States. It's
it's very, like, it is.
Back away. We're not.
Yeah, there's this sense of limited resources. Only the best shall survive. We're up the mountain and the plane has crashed. And if you need to eat the other entrepreneurs to survive, you need the other entrepreneurs to survive. Whereas actually, I think here, the reality is we do have, because of the government interaction, we do have more of a focus on resourcing. So I think we've never gotten to the stage of, cannibalism, which now has this weird mental image in my head. Cannibalism. That's the new thing we're talking about now.
We don't need a fist fight between Musk and Elon. You just need a cooking show of them cooking Richard Branson. Oh God! Oh God!
I have this image in my head, and it's funny. I think of cannibalism, and for some reason, the person who's on that cooking show is Bobby Healy, delivering said cannibalism things by a drone all around Manchester.
Oh, I love that. I love that. No, but it's so true. Like, as you mentioned, like, even outside the government resources, like, the government resources are obviously Enterprise Ireland, local enterprise office, but then you've got kind of, I suppose, like, the NDRC, you've got HBAN, you've got the incubator spaces like Dogpatch, Republic of Work, Portershed. There was another one you mentioned.
Or RDI down in Kerry, the shiny one, the one that had all the money spent on it.
Yeah. No, like, there's so many different things, and like, I even noticed that, like, so I brought my mate Jimmy with me to the Dublin Tech Summit, and he was just like, the fuck. So we both come from like a retail background, and he was walking in seeing all the shiny stalls. He was, what do I do? What do I do? Like, I was like, imagine this like your phone shop. These are all people that you can just chat to, and everybody's cool to chat. And now you should have seen him 6 hours later at the after party, and he had like 30 people around him, and he's explaining the Irish history of 1916. You're like, Jimmy, yeah, you've got this. You're fine.
Yeah, it's funny. I always say to people, when there's a famous street in San Francisco called Sand Hill Road, and it's where all the biggest venture capital firms in the world are all based on that. It's like the South Mall in Cork. It's a famous street, Bagot Street in Dublin. And like, if you're going out there, I mean, these are the big guys now. These are the guys who have billions to invest. And that's like if you're going out there for meetings, you're in serious territory. And I always say to I always get Irish founders ringing me, kind of saying, "Come here, any bit of advice? We're going out to San Francisco looking for a bit of money. What do you do?" And I said, "Remember, you're Irish." And they're like, "What has that got to do with it?" I said, "You have a secret meeting slot." And they're like, "What do you mean?" I said, like, if you think about it, like I'm a venture capitalist. Every day I can take about 3 meetings in the morning. I can kind of take then I have to fucking have my lunch. Then I can take maybe 3 meetings in the afternoon, all right? So that's 6 meetings a day I could do. You're Irish. You're the one person who can ring them and go, "Come here, I know you're busy all day and you must be up the walls and all that stuff. Why don't I meet you for a pint after work?" And suddenly, all day long, all the venture capitalists thinking about, "Colin, I've never been for a pint with an Irish person before. I wonder what that's like." And he's gone around at lunchtime and he's told all the other partners in the firm, "Come here, I go for a fucking pint with this guy John after work." So suddenly you find yourself in a bar in downtown San Francisco with like the 4 main partners in the fund. Now, of course, you have to paddy it up and you have to drink Guinness when you drink. I don't drink at all, but like you still have to drink.
That's the day when a Guinness 0.0 and you're explaining.
And sing a drinking song for them or something like that.
Of course.
Hey, you just got the meeting that everybody in the world is killing themselves for,
And like, do you know what? I probably haven't had this rant on the podcast yet, but I'm going to have it now. I have a theory about the Irish pub. It is the world's greatest fucking spy network. They're everywhere. Yeah. It's truth serum in a glass that's getting handed around. I believe that MI6, SEAL Team 6, they have nothing on the bar staff of the Irish pubs that they're sitting back on. Report back. No.
Yeah.
Job done.
Oh, but like John, you know yourself, like it's a funny one because it's like, I mean, if we actually embraced it properly, like, I mean, we talk about British colonialism and what they managed to take over. So we should have taken over the world, like with the amount of, what do we have? 70 million Irish people around the world or something like that. Yeah. But it's true. Like it's such, I think you see it and you become hyper aware of it when you're overseas. And if you live overseas, and like I lived in London, I spent a lot of time in the States and stuff. You see it then because, you miss hanging out with other Irish people. Yeah. But it is a powerful force of nature, to bring Irish people together. And like, we just don't take advantage of it. Like I've been given out for years, like Cork has 2 sister cities, formal sister cities. One is San Francisco and one is Shanghai. And I'm like, come on now, lads, like we have to take advantage of these in
surely, yeah.
But like bringing it back to the point of like starting your own business and entrepreneurship, I mean, genuinely, we'll make a general rule because there's in every landscape, there's always 1 or 2 assholes. But for the most part, if you're starting a business, you can reach out to anybody. Like if if you're fascinated by what Bobby Healy is doing in his drone apocalypse up in Blanchardstown, I'm pretty sure you can hit Bobby up on Twitter or LinkedIn and say, "Come here, Bobby, that's insane stuff you're doing there. I have an idea, blah, blah, blah." Now, the worst thing Bobby will say to you is, "Come here, I'm super busy at the moment. Can you get back to me later?" Or sure, call up for a cup of coffee. Like if you're so long as you're not going to waste somebody's time, you're going to be respectful of their time. Honestly, I have a very short list in my head of a couple of people who I'm like, "Oh God, no, don't email him." Like,
yeah.
So I think that's like I've seen that with especially the new generation of entrepreneurs coming up. The guys behind Gym Plus Coffee, Amy Conley, and all these people. Like the one thing they did so well was like build their networks, reach out to people, ask for help, ask for opinions. But again, they did it in a way where they made it super clear, "Hey, we're willing to put in all the work. What we really need is a bit of help steering the ship. We'll row the boat. Can you just kind of point us roughly in the direction of land?" Like,
no, but it's so true, and like that is probably the biggest takeaway I've had this year is that the Irish startup community is probably one of the most welcoming because, like, I had Bobby on the podcast only about a month or so ago, trying to organize something with Rollair at the moment for when they have time. We have Spectrum Life on in the next few weeks. We have IP Telecoms on in the next few weeks, and a lot of these are just messaging guys and going, "John, do you have an hour one of the evenings just have a chat?" And they go, "Cool, yeah. Like, do you want money? Do you want?" No, it's like, "No, I just want to have a fun chat with somebody interesting." Like, "Oh yeah, I'll do that." great. And like, I think most of the podcasts I'm learning stuff off of as well, because you're talking to people who are experts in their field, and if you can take one thing away from people who've been there, done that, excellent. Just be respectful. Don't be a dick.
It. Like John, I guarantee you, if you ask any entrepreneur, what their biggest learning about the whole thing is, like they'll tell you one thing, and it's like 99% of it is making it up as you go along. Like it's the thing that I realized a long time ago is like there is no perfect roadmap, because if there was a roadmap to success, sure, we'd all be on it, and we'd all be, we'd all have some of Elon's money. We don't, like, there'd be a lot more millionaires and a lot less billionaires. But the reality is like if you and me both decided to start a business today, the exact same business, like there's no path that would have both of us successful, because like I'd be building it down in Cork, and I'd be doing this, and you'd be building it doing this. So like I think the challenge is, I think a lot of people think that, I have to go to college and get a degree in entrepreneurship, or I have to do this, or I have to do that. Like if like the way I always look at it is, I said, like, if you're starting a company, well, your first responsibility is to the company. Your second responsibility is, like, just make sure you're not wasting time. So you just like, if you think what you have to do next is, do a course, do an accelerator, do an incubator, whatever, cool. Like, that's good. But like, make sure you're doing that stuff for the right reason. Like, I think sometimes, like 99% of all problems or all challenges in a startup are solved by one thing: talking to your customer, or your future customer, or your potential customer. Very few problems that won't solve. I think sometimes you get people who, they're a bit of perfectionists, they have a bit of OCD, they want everything to be perfect before they go and talk to the customer. And then the problem is then, well, what you've built then is for you, not based on like what you find. It's the one downside I find in Ireland is you find a lot of Irish people, they fall in love with their idea, and they go and build their idea, and they expect the market to change around them. Like, what you should really be doing is you should find a problem that you want to solve in the world. And then you should fall in love with solving that problem, and you should get obsessive about, I'm going to fix this problem, and actually here's the product or service that I'm building to make that problem go away. And sure, if you get it wrong the first time around, you can always come back and build another solution. It's harder if you pick a shitty problem and you're, or if you pick a problem that isn't really a problem. I'd love to be able to get Cadbury's cream eggs all year round, and they're only available in whatever, March, April, May. What's the thing? I'm going to freeze 1 million Cadbury's cream eggs every day or every month to make them available across the year. Not really a problem worth solving,
nobody cares. It's so true. Like, you actually said something there, and it stuck with me. So I actually have a master's degree in international entrepreneurship and business management. And honest to God, I won't name the college. It's on my LinkedIn if anybody wants to see. But the biggest waste of fucking time and money I've ever done. So Colm O'Brien of Carambola Kids, he's actually like lives 2 doors down from my mum.
Oh, cool.
So grew up in a mad estate. So Louise Cooney, who you probably see here, there, and everywhere in the news, her and my mum are drinking buddies, and Colm O'Brien lived a couple of doors down the road. He popped in for a guest lecture, and we had just done 2 hours of distribution models. And so naturally, the first question that got asked by somebody was, so what's your distribution model? And he went, the fuck you talking about? I put the lunches in the back of the car, and then when they couldn't fit in the car, I bought a van. Then I hired a guy to drive the van while I went back to my car. And now I have 5 vans. And if I went by that distribution model, I'd have 4 vans in the driveway, no company. So I just sat there and went, cool, that's 10 grand down the drain. Wonderful.
It is. Do you know what it is? There's an awful tendency for overthinking. Like I always look, he's a mentor to me, and I love the dude, but I always go back to Pat Phelan in Cork, because like Pat's only educational qualification is as a butcher. That's his Pat sends you a CV, it's like formal training, butcher. But like if you actually follow that through, was a butcher, very, hyper focused on quality, loved meat basically. decided that other people were making a hames of the meat that he was chopping up, decided to open a restaurant, wanted to do a Thai restaurant, decided he needed Thai chefs, set up a recruitment company in Thailand. Then the Thai chefs were coming to Ireland and they weren't staying long enough because they were homesick. So he set up a phone card company so that the guys could ring home. And as to your earlier point, I remember Pat telling me, like, there was no complicated distribution model. He put a whole bunch of money in a briefcase, flew to London, bought phone cards, brought home said phone cards on the Aer Lingus flight and sold them. Went from phone cards to internet to calls shops, to internet shops, to Cubic Telecom, to having a problem with fraud in Cubic Telecom, to setting up Trustive. Like, you know, he worked in problems that he had experienced himself, and he didn't overthink them. All he ever did was, and he is obsessive about it, about you build what the customer wants you to build, not kind of what you think in your own head, you know?
And it's a very valid point that you said there. I think a lot of these people come from customer-facing backgrounds where, like, my granddad owned a jewelry shop. I grew up sitting on a counter at 8 years of age, learning how to gut watches and put batteries into the back of, like, that shop that's down the crescent. My handwriting is still on the wall in the back office. Like, genuinely, that long down the line, like, you're, as you said, Pat, there, he'd have been around the butchers, you know, serving customers, talking to people, and you get used to being told fuck off and no. And over the years, you get so immune to it, I think, that you just kind of ride the punches of the nose. I'll take 10 no's to get my yes. That's fine.
It is, John, like, that's such an important thing. Like the one, you know, we were talking earlier about, like, qualities of around entrepreneurship. Like, you have to have a thick skin because, like, I see it every single day because, I mean, you know, every day I get 20, 30 calls or emails or texts or something like, hi, will you invest? Will Sure Valley invest in our company? Right? And the answer in 95% of them is no, it won't. And some of them, the answer is because your company idea is terrible. Most of the cases, just like, no, that's not a sector we invest in, you know, because we only do very particular things. But actually, like, I'll tell you, you know, you kind of, you know, you try to keep their spirits up because they're like, oh, you know, we've been on to a bunch of VCs or a bunch of private investors and they're all saying no to us and stuff. And like, I go back and I kind of go, look, you know, what, 2014, 15, when we were doing Trustive, like, Pat must have done 150 calls with investors to get the 5 that eventually invested 3.2 million in the company. But like, why could he do that? He could do that because, like, he didn't get upset every time somebody said no, you know? And like, in business, you're as you said there, like, you're going to hear 10 times as many no's as yeses. And I think you're right. Like, that's where some people have an advantage, you know, if they worked when they were teenagers and stuff, and they just, you know, they got like, what happens an awful lot these days is you get people who, you know, didn't do anything, didn't have jobs in their teenage years, didn't have jobs in college. They graduate college, they go to set up a business. And like, the first problem they have then is like, oh shit, they actually don't know what a paycheck is, and they don't know what PAYE and PRSI, and they don't know what it's like to work in a business, and suddenly they're running a business. And then suddenly, as you said, like, they're getting no's and no's and no's, and they're taking them personally. And like, as I always said, the great thing about setting up a company is that the company is a separate, you know, a company is a separate legal entity to you. Yeah. If a company goes bankrupt, 9 times out of 10, DC or John doesn't go bankrupt. So the way I always look at it is, so if somebody is saying no to your company, they're not saying no to you. They're saying no to the company. So like, you know, I often think like everybody in their office should have like a giant teddy bear or something like that and just have the name of the company on it. They're only saying no to the bear. They're not saying no to you, you know?
I'm clipping that and sending it to Martin because me and him literally had a fucking argument today. I saw a video with this 6-foot fluffy goose, and I was like, "It's €70. I'm buying it." He's, dude, don't do that.
I think the goose should be the chairman of your board. I think you should put a tie on him, and I think he should have the deciding vote on everything.
We have Goose branded football jerseys, so he'll be in that.
Oh, there you go. See,
he's got the company colors. So
I'm buying
the giant goose.
I think that's a responsible use of your money.
Yeah, totally. Totally. No. So, question for you, because we mentioned this at the start. What was the mad shit that you were doing during COVID?
Oh, this is so fucking weird, right? So over COVID, I was the chief operating officer of one of the biggest COVID testing companies in the UK.
Right.
So I hate to say it, but while everybody else was trapped indoors, I was actually commuting to the UK every week because I was running a healthcare company. I got to go to Cork Airport, walk through an empty Cork Airport onto an empty Aer Lingus plane, fly to London, walk through an empty Heathrow, walk through a London that was like straight out of 28 Days Later. You know what I mean? Not a soul to be seen anywhere. The lone empty Coke bottle rolling along the pavement. Oh. Yeah, so ran a COVID testing company that was doing, multiples of, in Ireland, I think at the time, they were doing like 13,000 tests a day. Like we were doing multiples of that on a roll. We were doing all the testing for British Airways, EasyJet, like all 13 big airlines, all the hotels, even people that like people forget things like Disney cruises and Royal Caribbean cruises. So even though the cruises weren't sailing, the boats were parked up and they were fully staffed. So, on a cruise ship, you could have up to 2,000 staff. So they still had to be COVID tested every day and stuff. And then, but the thing was, like, you were involved in this huge industry that literally, like, we used to have a call with Downing Street most mornings. And, like, I mean, I can tell you from personal experience, like, there was some sort of a giant wheel on the wall that was being spun for, like, what's the trick of the day that we're going to introduce? Let's shake up the regulation.
Yeah, let's see what we got.
Now it has to be 2 days in or 3 days in. So, like, I could say, like,
that was the Boris era, wasn't it?
I'm surprised we all survived because governments were making it up as they went along. But it was a fascinating lens to watch. I mean, it was a scary lens, but fascinating lens to watch the whole thing go down because like literally, I suppose I got to see it from two countries' perspectives.
Yeah,
because I was working in the UK and then I was coming home and having to deal with like literally getting food for family and all that sort of stuff. And then I got to this weird thing where like I got vaccinated in the UK pretty early on, obviously, because I was a healthcare worker.
Yeah.
And then, of course, like the Irish government had no way of recognizing my UK vaccination status. So I probably have had more. I'm surprised I haven't developed superpowers, the amount of doses of like, I pretty much had every vaccine.
Cover now, isn't it? It's like, I totally have no superpowers. Look this way, not this way.
That's it. Yeah. So they might develop yet.
Yeah, that's fucking mad.
But it was a strange 2 years, and it was great in one sense because you kind of felt like you were actually getting involved and helping out, but then you kind of saw the best of humanity, I think.
Yeah, I think the reset that was needed. That's not ideal or good to say, but I think people's values in terms of
I think honestly, I saw a lot when I came home, being transparent, like where you saw a lot of people, on a Saturday morning I'd go and do shopping for my mum and dad, and you could see a load of other people doing shopping for their elderly neighbors and all this sort of stuff. Like you saw the worst of it too, because there were still the assholes in England who were still using their private jets to fly everywhere, and like you were kind of you were sending somebody to an airport to to COVID test somebody because they were off to fucking Barbados or Dubai or something like that, But I think in general, for the most part, it you saw the best of people.
But even things like remote working and being around your family and things like that wasn't even a consideration, and like hybrid working spaces, like pre that was just a no-go zone. Like I was probably the outlier in the fact that before COVID I was already working remote. So for the last 8-9 years, this is all I know. Yeah.
But you're right, John. It was a huge thing, like because it was always the argument was like, oh, like nobody will be productive if they're working at home in their pajamas. Guess what, guys? Turns out they were nearly more productive when they were at home in their pajamas.
I honestly find when I go up to the office these days, I get half of the amount done because it's the chats. It's and it's a lot of the time it's really good stuff. It's somebody over your shoulder going, any chance I can ask you a quick question or this, that, and the other. And it's good for getting quick fire things done. Hybrid approach is very useful. But like when I'm at home, it's just like headphones on, or I'm not going to say her name because she's in the background and she'll do something. But I'll play my music and I'll just zone in and go, right, leave me alone. Let me get it done. And I think especially, maybe it's an Irish thing, guilt. Guilt's a wonderful factor that you almost feel like you have to do it. It's like, I might take the piss and go do my washing, but as long as I get everything done and take my boxes, then nobody has anything to.
I think it comes down to, John. It comes down to something that we need a lot more of in this world, which is the kind of personal responsibility thing. I think there was a certain element where suddenly everybody's at home working on their own, and they're kind of like, right, I'm going to have to kind of learn how to do this, because I can't tap John on the shoulder and go, what's going on here? But I do think that's I do think Irish people are naturally pretty good at that. You throw us into any situation, I think Ireland will do very, very well in the zombie apocalypse, to be honest with you, because I think we'll be pretty resilient, compared to some other countries who think they'll be good but won't be. But I think COVID was it transformed an awful lot. Now we spent our whole life on Zoom calls and team calls and all this sort of stuff. We still can't work the feckin' things. When have you ever had one go right? But I do think it also created for a lot of people, it gave them a lot of, first of all, it gave employers a lot to think about in terms of, okay, actually, all these urban legends you thought about letting people work from home are not true. I think for people, it did kind of get people thinking a lot about what's important, what would I do, when suddenly you're kind of left with this, how do you want to organize your own day stuff? Yeah. I think that was really beneficial. And I hate to see the little bit of backpedaling that's going on in some companies at the moment, because you're just going like, guys, for feck's sake, it works. Stop backpedaling. Stop backpedaling unless there's a damn good reason. It's just this whole thing of you now have what you have now is a bunch of new middle managers who are being promoted to senior managers, and they're kind of just pissed off that they've no, it's like minions.
Nobody's here around the place. Go away. And a lot of I feel it's real estate. People have paid their rent on these big ass buildings. Like Uber here in Limerick is a behemoth of a unit. There's no need. There's no need. Leave the leads. I whinged about it for years. I'm going into an office to go hide myself in a room to go on video calls for 5 hours with clients. Why can't I do that at home? I'm only seeing the lads at lunchtime. So what's the point? It's not. You're making me drive to Shannon, which is like half an hour. To drive back to go away. It makes no sense. Whereas in that half hour in the morning when I'm meant to be driving, I've got my gym done, and that's an hour back. But that hour back in the day, that's an hour where something else is getting done. Whether that's families with their kids, that's time in the morning, with the kids doing breakfast and things like that. I think you're going to see that in the younger generation coming up there.
Completely. I'll tell it to you, because I see, when I was in Dogpatch, I had people working for me who just had amazing jobs, were incredibly hard workers. And one girl in particular who was my favorite person I've ever worked with. She was the hardest worker I've ever worked with. And she just randomly one day decided, I've decided I'm going to take next year off and go traveling Australia and Asia. And I was like, off you go. And I was like, no, because there's a different mindset and there's a different set of values. And it is just more focused. The reality is, I think the next generation coming after us, or in my case, 2 generations after me, you've got a lot of years on me, buddy.
Probably not as much as you think.
There is just more of a focus on, they care about the quality of their life, and their life does not work is number 2. Work is not number 1 anymore. And therefore, I think employers, I think the good news is that for most employers, that benefits them, because you get a workforce who want to get the work done and want to get the hell out of there. But actually, if you're a workforce who are determined to drip every drop of blood out of your workforce. That's not like that. Like that's not going to be where you're going to get the best people. Like the best people are going to be the people who want to work hard and they want to learn stuff. And like in any era, that would have been the definition of great employees. Focused people who want to work hard and they want to constantly be learning. I think the next generation is that. But if you don't meet them halfway by giving them the space to learn, giving them the space to do stuff, and back to the way back. That's potentially the benefit of AI, is that AI will basically bridge that gap productivity-wise. So it'll actually allow you to get more done in less time. But for fuck's sake, then instead of trying to fill, instead of going, I could get another day out of those people. Well, that extra day is how you reward the employees. That extra day is how you create processes to increase learning opportunities and all that sort of stuff.
But it's so true. And
that way you do it for free, basically.
Like I can only speak for myself, and I'm in the nicest sense, I'm nuts. Like outside of my 5-day job, my actual day job, I do this. I manage a football team. I have the fantasy football game, and like that's all in my free time. Yeah. I can tell you now, if this country was to make a 4-day working week, everything that would get done.
Yeah,
because the amount of time somebody spends a half an hour in the morning reading Sky Sports News, or spends a half an hour in the evening just swinging around in circles in their chair because it's like, I just have to be here till I'm done. If you made it a 4-day work week, you gave everybody a Monday or a Friday back, watch the rate of innovation that happens, because you'd have so many people be like, I have a day now to just focus on the thing I want to do.
Yeah. Because that's like, it's funny, man. That is one of the biggest challenges with starting your own business, is finding the time, because it's great to pretend, like it's great to go, I've got a 9-to-5 Monday to Friday, and I'm boring here, I've got innocent smoothies, €1 off from Centra.
Yeah, but you're actually healthy. My heart, I can hear it most of the
time. But the challenge is starting business takes time, and like I kind of always say to people, a lot of like it's kind of weighted against you. A lot of the supports. What Ireland isn't really designed for is people who are in jobs and make a decision to start a business. There's a kind of an assumption that, like, if you have a nice safe job in the bank, you should stay in your nice safe job in the bank. So a lot of the supports run by people happen 9-to-5 Monday to Friday. That's why I think NDRC, the National Startup Accelerator, I love the fact that their pre-accelerator program, they put 100 companies through it every year, is on, like, I think Monday nights and Thursday nights. It's like doing a night course in practical shit. Like, it's funny how
or something like that, which is perfect.
Yeah, like I think you need to what I always kind of say to people is, if you want to start a business, it's really simple. The first thing you need to do is when can you have two uninterrupted hours a week? And as I said, usually, if you've kids or anything like that, that's not going to be Saturday morning. It's never going to be Saturday morning, because, like, no matter what happens, you're going to have shit on Saturday mornings. It's going to be weddings, cousins, sleeps in, all sorts of nonsense. So actually, I always said, like, if you were good old Catholic Ireland, you'd always find an hour on Sunday morning to go to mass. Why not worship at the Church of Entrepreneurship and find your hour on a Sunday morning? The world is always a bit quieter and deader. But I always kind of think, like, if you're serious about starting your own business, start on a Sunday morning. Like, just dedicate an hour, 2 hours, 30 minutes, whatever you can on a Sunday morning, and come back to it week after week after week.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised in a couple of weeks how much progress you make, And then what I started doing then was say to people, right, what you do now is you find 3 or 4 other people in my case, Cork, who are doing the same. And what you do is you go for brunch on a Sunday morning, and you don't talk about the football, you don't talk about anything. You talk about, like, what you're doing, because actually, like, entrepreneurship is a team sport. Like, you don't try to do it on your own, because actually, that's when the demons show up. Like, you do it. You try to find a group of people who have no problem telling you how dumb you are, and who'll also pat you on the back when you get a little win. Like, today I managed to buy the domain name for my email and get it set up.
Nice.
Like, that's the big, like, for anybody who hasn't done it, that's a slightly bigger job than you think it is right now, and is well deserving of a little glass of champagne at the end of it. Once you've got DNS servers and everything set up.
But I think it was you who said it to me. Essentially, have a list and make sure every week tick something off the list. I mean,
the other thing, John, I always say to people is, like, I always kind of say to people, start old school, like just start with a couple of pieces of paper. And like every business is going to have a bunch of stuff. Like it's going to have a bunch of sales stuff, marketing stuff, finance stuff, investor fundraising stuff, product stuff. And like write your lists and make sure that you're ticking off a little bit of everything from every bit. Like what happens a lot with people in Ireland is they spend all their time on the fun stuff, product, marketing. And the two things they just stick their fingers in the ears and shove their head up their own ass about is sales and funding. Yeah. And the problem is if you get to the point where you have your product nailed and you have your marketing nailed, but you need funding or you need sales, like that's a tricky place to be in. Whereas actually, if you can kind of, it's a bit like if you're building the house, if you can do a little bit of each wall, a little bit of each room at a time, as opposed to going, well, we're going to finish the sitting room and then we're going to start building the kitchen. Like that's the hardest way to do something.
But it's so true. Like definitely, I definitely think it's about surrounding yourself with the right people. Like I know, like with Goose, we'll say myself and Martin have a very nice agreement. He's like, I'm going to leave you alone. You're like Joe. The more I leave you alone, the more things you do. Great. With the fantasy football game, we have Damien. He is the master of anti-crack. He is the sultan of no. He is literally the crankiest man in the world.
And he's a legend.
Polar opposite of me. And we have Jimmy in the middle. You have me, who's the absolute golden retriever, super hyper active, and Damien just sit there and go, John, no. And then Damien, and then in the middle you have Jimmy refereeing it, going, well, actually, John's right this time, or John, no, seriously, calm down. Damien and his just pan face are going, no, he's right this time. And then you have the mom test. The mom test is the one I've heard more and more about than any other thing. And honestly, what a fucking lie. They have not met Irish mothers. I turn around to my mother and go,
the book is brilliant. All right. There's a brilliant book. And ironically, Rob Fitzpatrick, who wrote the book, fucking is Irish. And he does clarify a little bit in the book that, Irish moms are a different rule.
Yeah, they're not the same.
I mean, there is an element to, like, I tell you, there is an element of truth to, we call it the principle behind the mom test, right?
Yeah.
Which is like, be careful about living inside in bubbles, because actually one of the challenges of having a really supportive entrepreneur ecosystem in Ireland is that maybe your idea is fucking terrible and nobody wants to hurt your feelings.
Yeah.
So like there are times where you do need, and that's, I think that's why too, like, if you're starting a business, I mean, I won't say don't start a business with your best friend, but I said, like, make sure your best friend is very different than you, because you need all kinds of everything. And definitely, like, the longer I'm around startups, the more I see as one of the critical success features is like just like radical honesty and transparency about what's going on and like where you are at. And like, if there's only 100 quid left in the bank account, there's only fucking 100 quid left in the bank account. That's just where you're at, So I think that's a big part of like startup success is like having a co-founder, having a mentor, having somebody that you go for coffee with twice a year, so that you can kind of have, frankly, you just have somebody who isn't afraid to tell you what the fuck, and in my early careers, like that was always like, I had a bunch of people who I deliberately like would try and go, right, 4 times a year, once every 3 months, I'm going to meet this person. And it was very much so that they'd be like, the first question they always ask you is like, oh, how's it going? And like, you could suddenly realize, fuck, like I haven't really done much since the last 3 months I saw you. And you knew that if you started bullshitting them,
they know.
You see it on their face. They were just we're not going to have a proper conversation. We're not going to have any conversation.
No, that's where I love Jimmy. So Jimmy actually hired me out of Burger King to work in Carrefour Warehouse 12 years ago. So that was actually how that came about. He used to come over to Burger King at Thursday at the exact same time, 8 p.m., and he'd have an XL bacon double cheeseburger, chili cheese bites, supersized with a Diet Coke, because it's all about that slim factor. So you'd see him coming around the corner, and you'd have
Diet Coke made all the difference.
All the difference, not the double stack burger, not the chili cheese bites. The Diet Coke was the important bit. But over time, you'd start seeing him come out the window, and eventually, you're good at remembering these things. You want a job, and 12 years later, we're still screaming at each other, I guess. But again, it's all the different personalities are what make this.
Yeah.
I've taken up an hour of your time, so I suppose I have one last question, and I'll let you go about your evening because you're a busy man. If someone was starting a company today, 3 top tips that they can, or 3 biggest mistakes to avoid, whichever way you want to frame it. I don't mind.
Interesting. Definitely, to reiterate the point again, starting a business is a team sport. Like, ask for help, ask for advice, connect with people. You've no excuse not to. There's just too many resources out there now these days. That's definitely one. Because fundamentally, the reason I say that is, no matter what you think your idea is, A, it's been done before, and B, no matter what your business is, most of the important shit is the same. Like, not getting in trouble with the tax man or the bank manager, that's the same no matter what you're doing. Like, so therefore, you may have a unique spin, unique idea. Most of the stuff you need help with is going to be generically the exact same thing. I think that the most important thing when you're starting a business is thinking about cash flow, because actually it's what kills all the successful companies that die. It's what kills them, because they're looking on paper and they're seeing our customers owe us 100,000, but they don't recognize that, but half of that isn't coming until next month, and I have 80 grand worth of bills this month. Yeah. So I think you have to be ferocious about cash flow, which kind of means you have to know some of the basics of accounting, and then also get yourself a great accountant. So I think a lot of the success that you see in the US in particular is because of the fact that every US citizen has to do their own tax return. Your average US citizen is a little bit more legally and fiscally aware than your average Irish citizen, who just knows that their employers do something.
The tax comes out.
So I think, if you take, I remember seeing something, if you take the top 100 startup founders that have ever come out of Silicon Valley, and if you break them down by what they did in college, I think something like 60% of them did law degrees in college.
Especially in the States, where it's
because in America you sue for everything.
Exactly.
So I think network, cash flow. The third one is the obvious one. Just fucking get started. It sounds like a really stupid one, but actually, if you have an idea and you want to start a business, get up this Sunday morning and do fucking 30 minutes on it. There is no good time to start. A load of people will go, I want to start a business, so I'll start in January. I'll tell you when the worst time to start a business is. January, right? Because you're broke after Christmas and you need every penny you have. Yeah. So I would say stuff takes time. If you genuinely wanted to start a business in 2025, I think now is the time. I think if you count the number of Sundays between now and then, you probably have enough time to do all the basics of bit of a business plan, bit of a pitch deck, start thinking about money, start thinking about your first customer, you have enough time to build a website on Squarespace. If you want to start a business in 2025, you kind of want to get started this Sunday.
That's so true. What's this? I can't remember. Again, I'm terrible. I'm great at remembering the quotes, but not great at crediting who said them. Yeah. An idea is a dream without a plan.
An idea is a dream without a plan. That says it all.
Now, so if anybody wants to contact you, or if they even want to contact you,
I am the hardest man in the world to contact, because my email address is just me@dc.ie.
There you go.
If you want money, send it to the work address, dc@svv.ai, Sure Valley Ventures, svv.ai, or surevalleyventures.com. But if you want to talk shite, or I do, you know this, John, I do a bunch of kind of slots in my calendar every single week on Thursdays and Fridays and Saturdays just to talk nonsense. You mentioned work and hobbies. Like my day job is investing in startups, and my hobby is talking to startups. So
yeah,
help me with my hobby.
Come here. I have the same. This is my hobby job. I get to talk to people like you. And then after I finish this up, it's publish it. Actually, and this is how we're going to tie this all together. So once this is done, you're going to be on, this is up on YouTube. The video is also going to be available on Spotify because we're video on Spotify now, which is always good. You're going to be able to find us on Instagram, Twitter. Well, we're not on Twitter anymore because, Instagram.
And you know the Cork man running Spotify, basically, don't you?
Yeah, of course. Cork gets its sign off right at the finish.
Where everywhere.
The Irish network of pubs. There you go. And on that note, goodbye, good evening, good morning, good night, good day. I suppose whenever the hell you're listening to this, have a good one. DC.
So long.